In 2012, Joey Logano was at a crossroads in NASCAR's Cup Championship Series at just 22 years old. The highly touted young driver had struggled to win consistently on NASCAR's biggest stage and was dropped by Joe Gibbs Racing. Once Logano resurfaced at rival Penske, he found success on his own terms. But Logano's racing redemption bred a fierce enemy in former teammate Kyle Busch. Even if you don't watch NASCAR, you might know the name Kyle Busch. He's become auto racing's boisterous, undisputed #1 villain, and he's both loathed and loved for the character that he's become. Despite growing up in an auto racing family and winning the sport's biggest prizes, Busch acts like an outsider, carrying a long streak of feuds and a penchant for fearlessly and publicly talking shit about other drivers, even his own brother Kurt. In that particular spat, their grandma had to break it up. So, take it from the man himself. He is an asshole.
I'm an asshole.
Okay.
Yeah, you an asshole.
I am. I've been known to be quite the big butthole. Yeah, absolutely.
Off the track, Joey Logano is the absolute opposite of the Kyle Busch experience, although his career began a lot like Busch's. They're actually kind of similar. As a teenage driver in Connecticut, Logano was hailed by veteran Randy LaJoie as the greatest thing since sliced bread. When Logano was ready to compete full-time in the Cup Series, he started with Busch at Gibbs Racing. Together, the teammates cooperated on the track and worked a ton of publicity off of it to push a younger image of the sport to fans. But Logano struggled to live up to the substantial hype and was dumped by Gibbs after the 2012 season, despite protests from Busch to keep Logano at Joe Gibbs Racing. The only team offering Logano a full-time Cup Series driver spot was Penske, a bitter rival to Gibbs thanks in large part to Penske driver Brad Keselowski's ongoing feud with Kyle Busch. Keselowski once called Busch an ass over a PA system before a race. Logano reinvented his career working with Keselowski and Penske, and suddenly NASCAR's clean-cut, nice, quiet kid was racing ruthlessly, so much so that Logano found himself pissing off NASCAR legend Tony Stewart. After Logano blocked the cantankerous veteran on the track in 2013, Stewart attacked Logano in a kind of middle school lunchroom type of brawl that's more hollering than punches connecting, but it's still a big deal. Logano's Cup Series driving started to match his debut hype, giving way to a baby-faced Jekyll off the track and an absolute Hyde behind the wheel, which was the kind of character perfectly designed to drive the sport's premier asshole nuts. A clash between the former teammates felt inevitable, and in 2017, everything exploded. With 2 laps remaining at the Cobalt 400 in Las Vegas, race leader and Logano teammate Keselowski suffered a part failure and began to drop from first place into the pack. As Keselowski's car failed, Busch moved to the bottom of the track to avoid a collision and made light contact with Logano's car in the process. As they entered turn 3 of the final lap, Logano's car got loose and hit Busch, sending his car spinning into pit row. A determined, silent Busch went straight for Logano on pit road and took a swing on him right in front of Logano's entire crew. Once Busch was pulled out of the scrum, he was bleeding from his forehead. After that fracas, a fairly calm Logano gave his version of events on the track to the live broadcast, even noting,
Kyle and I usually race really well together, usually never have any issues.
And when asked if any blows landed in the fight, he cheerily replied,
None to me.
Once a pit reporter caught up with Busch, the man nicknamed Rowdy and Wild Thing by rivals for his own driving style, he complained,
I got dumped. Flat out just drove straight in the corner and wrecked me. That's how Joey races, so he's going to get it.
According to Busch, tension had been building since Logano's departure from Gibbs to Penske, where, according to Busch, the young Logano had started behaving like Keselowski, that bitter rival of Busch's. There were some other instances where he and I were kind of rough on the track. We weren't really disrespectful, but it was starting to get to that point where it was like, all right, man, that probably went a little too far. 4 years later, on the I Am Athlete podcast, Busch gave greater detail to his side of the scuffle, insisting Logano had wrecked him on purpose.
What? Boom! Just doored me, drilled me in the door. And I spun all the way down the pit lane. I knew he wrecked me, so I was pissed.
He also disputed Logano's claim Busch didn't land a punch.
I got the one hit in because the whole rest of the fight was just all these dudes pulling us apart.
Now, Fights in NASCAR aren't a new phenomenon, considering the sport of American stock car racing was born from moonshine bootleggers and Prohibition. But they aren't quite as common in NASCAR's family-centric, corporatized modern age. In the wake of their pit road confrontation, the talk of NASCAR wasn't whether or not Logano's driving or Busch's retaliation was at fault. It was if NASCAR would take disciplinary action on the drivers. NASCAR chairman Brian France told reporters, quote, "It's an emotional sport," and that NASCAR wouldn't suspend either driver, while motorsports media clamored that the fight was what the sport needed to build back interest. A week later, both drivers were summoned to a closed-door meeting with NASCAR officials before the Camping World 500 in Phoenix. Logano told reporters he'd initiated a phone conversation with Busch that week and told officials that the wreck in Vegas was, quote, "an honest mistake." "I hope he's able to see that and know that I was sincere about it, but time will tell," Logano told the media. Busch didn't speak to the media, but Logano clarified that the driving mistake was his. He took ownership for the entire incident, but then immediately told reporters he wouldn't stop his aggressive driving style. Logano's luck would worsen throughout the season, and after 4 years of top 10 finishes and 2 appearances in the championship round in the previous 3 years, he finished 17th in 2017, missing the playoffs. Busch would go on to finish as the Cup Series runner-up. Then, the pair would spend the next 2 seasons fighting on the track. Logano bounced back massively in 2018, winning his first Cup Series championship ahead of Busch in 4th place, while Busch finished the year tied for most race wins. In 2019, Busch won 4 of the first 14 races of the season, padding his lead in the standings. Starting March 10th, Busch spent 8 weeks at number 1, with Logano jumping in and out of 2nd place week to week, before Logano and the 22 Ford overtook Busch for number 1 after Busch finished 30th in Kansas. The pair would battle for first place for the rest of the summer and into the postseason. For 24 of 26 weeks, either Busch or Logano held first place, with Busch winning the regular season points championship after the Bojangles Southern 500 at Darlington. Both drivers would make the playoffs, but Logano would find himself in trouble with another driver just long enough to be eliminated by Busch. After an axle repair caused him to restart in Dover down 24 laps, Logano was criticized by driver Denny Hamlin for racing too aggressively with lead cars while having no chance to win. 2 weeks later at Martinsville, Hamlin crashed Logano into an outside wall. After the race, Hamlin and Logano exchanged words, and Logano took a swing at Hamlin just as Logano was walking away. Look at that passive aggressiveness. Kinda seems like behavior reminiscent of Kyle Busch. After a 9th place finish in the Blue Green Vacations 500 in Phoenix the following week, Logano was bumped out of the group of 8 by Busch, who would clinch his 2nd Cup Series championship with a win at Homestead. After trading championships and keeping their hatred on the track, Busch publicly called out Logano's racing style again in 2020. Kyle was the defending Cup Series champion, but winless through September, when he almost won the Bass Pro Shops night race at Bristol's famous short track. Busch led for 159 of 500 laps, but couldn't hold off Kevin Harvick with just 32 remaining, finishing 2nd. After the race, an angry Busch, close to playoff elimination, blamed his finish on an inability to pass lapped cars on the crowded short track, including, and specifically, Joey Logano. Quote, "He's nobody's friend for a reason, so there you have it." Logano laughingly responded on NASCAR Sirius XM, boasting that he had a lot of friends, just not on the track. So why is it that Busch, famous for his short temper and villainous persona, is so bothered by this kid? Joey Logano's off-track character is seemingly everything Busch isn't: low-key, cordial, and easygoing. And that's exactly why. It's because Busch, an avowed asshole in all walks of life, on and off the track, despises Logano's public image for not matching the man behind the wheel. In 2021, he told the I Am Athlete podcast,
The problem with Joey is he's two-faced. He'll come in here and he's laughy and go lucky, go with the flow, like super nice guy. When he puts his helmet on, he flips the whole switch on the back of his head. Like, if you're gonna be a nice guy on the racetrack as well. You know what I mean?
These comments, of course, made it back to Logano, who responded in kind.
I'm two-faced. I said he's right. I said he's 100% right. I said it, and I believe it's a compliment because he's saying that I can be a nice guy off the racetrack and I can be a total jerk when I go racing.
Kyle Busch's entire career has seemingly been conducted with a public persona in mind. it's possible that as the sport has lost relevance after 2 decades of a mainstream push away from its original outlaw redneck identity, drivers like Busch are striving to recreate the dynamic characters that made NASCAR famous. And characters need antagonists. Or Busch is just an asshole. And an asshole race car driver can't stand the idea of another asshole driver who races even more aggressively than him without the corresponding stereotypical personality to match. When asked by the media if Busch would ever consider squashing his beef with Logano, Busch said it didn't make much sense until both drivers retired. And that makes total sense, because Logano has shown no interest in mirroring his public persona with his on-track ruthlessness, which drives an authentic villain like Busch nuts. And as often as Busch baits him publicly, Logano never really says mean things back, which probably makes Busch even angrier. Logano, the race car driver, has always been ruthless, but over time he's evolved from kinda all shucks on the mic to a very tactical troll. Logano was in the play-by-play booth after Busch won an Xfinity Series race in 2021, and when the announcers interviewed Busch live from his car and informed him Logano was there, Logano cheerily assured Busch, "Don't worry, I've got my other face on right now." Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell friends and family and distant relatives about Secret Base. And if you liked that NASCAR beef, little rubbin', little racing, you can check out these other beefs, because beef is universal.